What do you think? Is there happiness in beauty? Before, I always thought that success was only in appearance. I was born a beautiful girl with perfect skin, big eyes. I had a great figure and a great voice. That is, all this in the complex caused delight in adults. I was often invited to appear in commercials, photo shoots, and I was paid for them. But envy from the outside can do harm. And one day it did, and then everything changed. Hi, I'm Cindy, and like I said, I look great and I have a nice voice. I was born like this. I didn't pump anything or have surgery, and I was proud of it. My mother called me a beauty and always admired my appearance. I was happy about it. In general, the more mature I became, the more I flourished. And then there was a beauty contest in a nearby town. I was told about this contest by almost all my friends and acquaintances, and everyone was sure that I would win. I was excited. I told my mother about it, and she agreed to accompany me there. For a month, I rehearsed, prepared for the competition, practiced my walk, smile, performed in front of a mirror, and picked out a bikini. When I arrived there, I saw how many people there were. Everyone applauded the participants, and it was excellent. With great excitement in my heart, I went on stage, held my posture, and made a speech. The contest lasted for several hours, and we were all very tired by that time. But nevertheless, when it was time to count the votes, a couple of minutes passed and then my name was called. Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. Could it really be true? I was invited to the stage, put on the crown, and handed a prize of $100,000. My mother was shouting with joy so that I could hear her from the crowd. Well, it was really cool. With half the money, we closed the rest of the mortgage that my parents bought for me. I bought a car and everything was great. But the happiness did not last long. 2 months after the competition, I began to receive different messages via email. I tried not to pay attention to them and not to read them, but one of them caught my eye. Someone threatened to kill me. Someone wrote that I would regret that I was born into the world. At first I was scared, and then I was distracted by a call from a friend, and I forgot about the email. But the very next day, just before my birthday, I decided to go shopping. Shopping dragged on, and I spent most of the evening looking for a dress. And when I got home, got out of the car, someone grabbed me from behind, doused me with gasoline, and set fire to my head. To be honest, I don't remember much. I was told about it. You may ask how much it hurt, but I don't even remember. I woke up in the hospital. My head was bandaged. When I saw myself in the mirror, I was hysterical. I lost my hair and some percentage of my skin on my face was damaged. I wanted to disappear. In general, it was difficult, terribly difficult, but in the end, I did not give up. And then, I came up with an idea. I found makeup artists on the internet, and my brother and sister lived near my house. I invited them home, and they weren't even horrified by me, even though my hair was growing and it wasn't as gorgeous as it used to be. They put on my makeup, and after 2 hours of work, turned me to the mirror. I was just like before and even more beautiful. Tears began to flow from my eyes, and I looked at myself and remembered life as it was before and as it became after. The makeup artists came up behind me, stroked my shoulders, and said that nothing had changed. How beautiful you were. You still are, they said, and I cried even more. They didn't ask any more questions, and they left. So, I decided to go out that day to remind myself. There was a fashion show in the city that day, and I wanted to go there to remember my life. I put on the same dress that I bought that fateful night and went to the show. People were surprised to see me. I saw them whispering, looking at me with questions on their faces, but I pretended not to notice. I just sat there and watched the show. That evening, 6 men came up to me. All of them fell in love with my appearance, my voice, and asked for my phone number, but I could not communicate with them yet. I thought that if they saw my real face, they would run away. And I was right. With one of them, I went on a date. We were having a nice time at a restaurant, but a row broke out at the next table. The girl poured a glass of water over her boyfriend, but he ducked and the liquid hit me right in the face. Some of my makeup came off, and my boyfriend stared at me in silent horror. I noticed his reaction and fled to the toilet. In the mirror, I saw that half of my face was bare, and when I got back to the table, he had left. He didn't even pay the bill. He just ditched me. I couldn't hold back my tears. The waiter came up to me and tried to calm me down, but I didn't want pity. I asked for the bill, but he said he would pay it himself. I ran home, barely calmed down, and continued to carry on. But a couple of days later, I met a familiar face in the market. It was that waiter. His name was Will. He started talking to me, asked me how I was doing, and I was embarrassed because he saw me get dumped and he saw a piece of my real face. We chatted and laughed, and then he invited me to dinner. I refused. I didn't want to be disappointed again. You probably didn't notice anything then, I told him, and he said that he saw everything and nothing bothered him about me. In general, he ran after me, like other guys who heard my face or saw me in makeup. I thought he was the same as everyone else, but it turned out that he was completely different. Will asked me out exactly 167 times and got the same number of rejections, but he didn't back down. And on the 168th time, when I was already freaking out, I pulled out a napkin in front of him and wiped my makeup off completely. I asked if he still wanted to see me at dinner, and he came up to me and kissed me. He called me a fool for thinking with my head too much. Sometimes you have to give way to the heart. It will definitely not deceive you and will not let you down, he said. Will really taught me a lot, helped me to accept who I was, helped me overcome my nightmares, became a close person to me, and he loved me. For real. For this, I am grateful to both him and my parents. It was stupid to think that everything was just a matter of appearances, right? What kind of beauty do you believe in? Tell me, guys, did you like my story? Write your opinion about it in the comments below the video. Do not forget to put likes, share the video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel.
Hello everyone, my name is Tom. At first you will think that my story is more like going to the movies, but unfortunately, this is a harsh reality, and I would like to share it with you. Since I can't tell anyone else about it, especially those who once knew me, I started life with a clean slate and there were good reasons for that. Now I will tell you more. From the very beginning, my life was hectic. The fact is that I grew up in terrible conditions. My father left my mother when he first found out that she was pregnant. My mother, Phoebe, was very worried about it, so she said, "We have no relatives. There was no one to help us." All we had was a small apartment that Phoebe inherited from her dead parents. Don't be surprised that I call her by her first name. It's just easier for me. My mother did not have a high sense of motherhood. I remember once, when I was 4 years old, she left for a few days somewhere, without even saying where. I was locked in the house alone, leaving no food or water. I had to eat what I found, toothpaste, something from the trash. I drank my own urine, and when on the third day I was already completely exhausted on the kitchen floor, she arrived. I think if my mother and I hadn't happened to have a neighbor drop by that day, she wouldn't have done anything and left me on the floor. But our neighbor, Mrs. Friendly, is an old grandmother, and she took me to the hospital. My mother was only worried about being sent to prison, but somehow it all worked out. About a couple of weeks I lived with a neighbor, so I have not eaten so well yet. She fed me so well, washed me, put me to bed. Although Mrs. Friendly was old, she was adept at handling children. She lived alone, maybe that's why she paid all her attention only to me. My mother was jealous. Imagine, even though she didn't take care of me, she was jealous of my grandmother, and when I got better, she took me home again. I remember the scandal. The neighbor did not want to give me away, scolded my mother for her behavior, but she did not want to hear criticism. She said that I was her son and she knew how to treat me, so she took me. My mother had taken another job, and now she was almost always gone. At this time, I ran to Mrs. Friend's to eat and sleep. We had a great time. I loved her probably more than my mother. Agree, whatever the mother was, the child still loves her, just a little less. Despite all the conditions, I grew up, and when it was time to go to school, my mother, of course, did not give me away. And then the whole nightmare started. Some men started coming to our house. They were unfamiliar to me. My mother usually made me sit in the hallway at this time. I could sit there for hours. And only then I began to run away to the neighbor. Phoebe didn't know we were still in touch, because I knew she was against it. I could spend half a day or half a night at Mrs. Friendly's without Phoebe noticing that I wasn't there. And then I would run to my seat when a man came out, and I would pretend to sit there all the time. The neighbor was shocked by what was happening, but could not do anything. And when I turned 14, I was determined to run away from home. I didn't know where to go, and I shared all my secrets with Mrs. Friendly. She begged me to stay with her, but I couldn't, because Phoebe would have found me. One day a neighbor talked to my mother, offered to take me away for upbringing, like she would take care of me, but my mother went berserk. I didn't understand why she needed me, because she was still indifferent to my existence. To which Mrs. Friendly replied that deep down in her heart, she probably hated herself for being such a mother, but she had buried herself too deep, and it was very difficult to get out. And I was only a small memory of a better life for her, for which there is no hope anymore. Then I definitely decided that it was time for me to leave. And then Mrs. Friendly came up with a clever idea. What if I changed my face? This would give me the opportunity to live with her, have a roof over my head, and most importantly, I would get what I wanted, care, and moreover, I would no longer have to hide from my mother. But how to do it? The operation was unthinkable because it was expensive and I needed my mother's permission. Besides, it's going to take a hell of a long time. Then we found a faster and more painless way: makeup. It was lucky that Mrs. Friendly had worked as a theater cleaner before, and she had good friends with makeup artists from there. In just an hour, they made a different person out of me. I changed my style of dress, put lenses in my eyes, tried to walk a different gait. I had my hair dyed a different color, but most importantly, with the help of cosmetics, I had a different face. I didn't recognize myself when I looked in the mirror, and I was very happy. Mrs. Friendly spread the news that her granddaughter was visiting her indefinitely while her daughter was abroad. Everyone believed her, because they knew that she really had a grown-up daughter. And I stupidly packed up and left, leaving a note for my mother not to look for me. I wrote that I left in search of a better life, without her. I was not sorry, especially since I had the opportunity to observe her life out of the corner of my eye. At first, she excited the neighbors, asked her for help to raise money to arrange a search, but the initiative lasted about 2 hours, after which another man came to her and she closed the apartment door. And I was relieved to be at Mrs. Friendly's, to have a new home, a family, and a quiet life. I helped Mrs. Friendly do the housework, cooked the food, she taught me that, cleaned up. And then they gave me documents in a different name and I finally went to school. I was very late in my years, but it didn't bother me. Better late than never. Mrs. Friendly got a good pension, benefits for the bills, and when I was on vacation, I worked part-time in a cafe, then at a car wash. This money was enough for us to live. It took about 1.5 months and I came home from school. On the way up in the elevator, my mother came to see me. Warily, she named the floor and then greeted me. "I know you. You're Mrs. Friendly's grandson, right?" she asked. I just nodded my head, and she went on as if she were talking to herself. "And I lost my son, or rather he ran away from me. I'm not a very good mother, I know, but I can't help it. He's about your age and even looks a bit like you. He's a nice boy, but I don't deserve him, so I'm not looking for him. Wherever he is, he's better off there than with me," she said, as if exhaling, and I noticed the tears in her eyes. Her words made me uneasy, and I had no idea how to react. And then we arrived, and I got out of the elevator, and my mom said, "If you see him, tell him I'm sorry," she concluded, as if she knew it was me. I paused for a moment, then continued down the hall. I told Mrs. Friendly about it, and she smiled and asked if I wanted to visit my mother, but I said no. If I hadn't gone missing, she wouldn't have said those words. Even though I felt sorry for her too, I couldn't find the strength to forgive her, nor did she ask for it. We'd been neighbors for a couple of years now, and I'd continued to grow, study, and take care of Mrs. Friendly. I made friends and my life changed, and then I learned the sad news. There was an ambulance at the entrance. I thought it was for us and was very scared, and then I found out that she had come to my mother. I ran into the apartment for the first time in so many years. It was terrible. Dirty, dusty, there was a terrible smell, and my mother was lying on the floor. She was barely breathing. I pushed the doctors aside and ran to her. I wanted to cry. I was afraid. My hands were shaking and I wanted to cry. I asked, "What's wrong with you?" And my mother said, "Forgive me if you can," and closed her eyes. My mother left me a letter that said, "I know it's you, and I was happy to see you living next to me and doing well. I'm sorry. I love you. I'll leave the apartment to you and Mrs. Friendly. Mom." I read the letter right after her funeral. She died of an overdose. Most of all, I was uneasy at the thought that she knew it was me and did not even try to return it. She just let me go. Maybe she's not such a bad mother after all, do you think? I've forgiven her, and they don't hold grudges against the dead. But I'm sorry too.